Good morning and welcome to the council briefing, Wednesday the 2nd of July. And first up we have Transportation and Emergency Works update for July. Thank you, Chris, Mark, Blair and Nick. And John.
Post me one sec to sort this out.
Chris, is it? Chris, grab it up to you.
I'll be going away shortly. Just a minute. Gonna drive this.
I think it will be me.
Was it?
Good to go.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor. Good morning, councillors. I'll be presenting on behalf of Downer this morning. Dion, who would normally do this, is still in Southern Africa, photographing animals, I think, and he'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. So where I don't have all of the detailed knowledge, I'll refer to Chris, Mark and Blair, who are the people who are actually involved in the day-to-day operation. Just from a summary, bit of a focus of what's happened during the month of May. We had a collaborative asset management workshop, 20th of May actually, where we looked at inspection quality data collection, also talked about asset management and collaborative asset management, and offered a road asset management service. From a summarising point of view, sealing programme was completed. 23.5 kilometres of road length resealed. Moore Street, I think most of that work was done in the previous month, but there were some items finished in the month of May to bring that rehab to conclusion. Most of the actual seal extension work on Settlement Road, Devich Road and Black Swamp Road were previously completed with minor completion works undertaken in May. Quite busy on the unsealed network, just reading through the stats here. So in terms of kilometres sealed, 161 kilometres of road graded, 2660 of imported metal across that network as well. I'll get Blair to speak a little bit more about the slip programme when we come onto that in detail. 14 slips completed, including Bickerstaff and Mason Road, and Tangawahine slip is progressing well. Obviously, this is as of the May report. And Blair will talk about the more complex, costly slips that are being delivered through KDC directly. Drainage was quite focused in May on drainage works. We had water tabling, stormwater channels, 3,804 reinstated, 19 new stormwater culverts installed. Just touching a little bit more on asset management, there's been a lot of work in May and into June around developing the forward works programme. I don't know, Chris, whether you'll touch on that later. Yep. Obviously, KDC don't have a dedicated asset management team, so Downer put in an office of service to KDC to manage road network assets. Just to lighten the mood, I think Dion's put an interesting fact in here around most journeys take place on, well, 55% of journeys take place on 16% of the network. And I guess Dion's put that in just to sort of focus where needs are and where the priorities likely be from forward works programme point of view. And obviously there's a bit of mapping in here showing where they are. Network inspections, a lot of network inspection activity in May, really to make sure that we've got our correct forward works program sites identified. So obviously there's some data in here on the mapping showing where they took place. And that tied back into the combined asset management meeting that I briefly mentioned. Dion talks about 552 faults identified and mentions that that's actually overall a reduction from the previous month. Task will be to look at the severity and location of those faults to prioritise those into the forward works programme. A little mention here about Argonaut, which is basically a video data collection to assist with fault identification and asset management as well. Customer requests, RFSs, 287 RFSs during May. Open at the end of May, I think, was 84. Probably not surprising, 50% of those were relating to unsealed roads and just 17% to sealed roads. And I imagine the rest would be around drainage and other roading assets. Obviously had a few events and some weather in May, so it's good to see that the response times were met to attend to emergency call-outs, and some of the text on the left-hand side relates to that, and vegetation clearance and clearing roads within those response times. Sealed, as I briefly touched on, the reseal programme was completed. I think we had about 94% of the sites complete at the end of the sealing window. So that, as I said before, equates to 23.5 k's of road length. The challenge now will be to make sure that we have a robust programme for the next financial year, 25-26, and that's what Chris and the team will be concentrating on over the next month. To try and maximise that reseal output. But in order to do that, we have to understand what the budgets are for pre-reseal repairs. Obviously, those two go hand in hand. Getting the budget right for pre-seal repairs opens up more of the reseal programme. And that's obviously to do with the waterproofing issues that Dion's probably previously mentioned in these meetings. Obviously, other general repairs relating to the inspections that I've talked about on the previous slide, those will get prioritised into that programme as well. So just in terms of a reseal programme, we actually started on the 10th of March. So to get 183,000 squares completed by the close of the programme is actually quite good going. That's very good going from the team. Chris will talk on the 25-26 programme. We've already talked about Devich and Black Swamp. Moore Street, we've also talked about previously as well. Unsealed, looking at the notes here, I think there's some hangover from the report from April sitting in here, but I think the number was over 100k, as I said before, of unsealed roads graded during May. Potholes 2,393 repaired during May 2025, and a few thousand cubes of metal strengthening across the unsealed network. Obviously, that is a challenge. It's a big network. There's a lot of network to cover with a relatively small budget, and Dion's made note of that in here. So it tends to be a spot metalling activity that we undertake to try and effectively spread that metal and that strengthening across the network. Obviously, ideally, we want to increase that budget to offer a high level of service. And there's a little bit of a plan there around the areas that were undertaken in May on the unsealed road maintenance. Relatively big programme of drainage maintenance in May as well. As I said before, 3,804 metres of water tabling being repaired, a few culvert ends. It's that focus on resilience that matters. So when we get storm events, the impact on the network will obviously be less if we've got the resilience back into the drainage network. It says 1 here, but actually it's 19. I think the 9's just been dropped off the report. So 19 new culverts installed and general flushing programme continued. I won't go through the list in a great detail unless anyone wants me to particularly, but it's talking about where those drainage works have been undertaken, those renewal and maintenance items have been undertaken. And then there's a list underneath of upcoming programme drainage works for the month. That'll be for the month of June. Be completed by now. Mark might touch on that. Slip repairs, I'll actually hand over to Blair actually to talk about progress of those. He'll know a lot more than I do. Thank you, Blair.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillors, the slip program, effectively we accelerated the works up until the end of 30 June. There is a spreadsheet or a PDF of a spreadsheet in your handouts hopefully or within the documents, and while there's more slips in the database that we're working on, those are the ones, when we talk about slips, those are the ones where we've either got an active contract or they are nearing completion. There are some slips that we have decided we're pushing out. So if I use an example, Wakapirau GNK, that's one that the residents are sort of asking about. It was a smaller slip and now it's taken out more and more of the lane. That's one that we're pricing in July. And similar, same time, we're also pricing or asking Three Cockers price the Canes Hill section again. So, yeah, any questions on the slips there? I think probably the key note from this, up until sort of May, the majority of work was being delivered through Downers as sub-suppliers, or they were engaging Essex Construction or other firms, Harrison, etc. And with NZTA accepting the registration of interest and its tender processes, which they'd already indicated they would, it's given us a wider pool of buyers, and now that means with them carrying out funding at 92% funding into the 25-26 year, we're actually in a position now to get all those jobs that we hadn't priced in the current round priced over that sort of July and August period, so they can do them prior to sort of March 26. Cool.
There you go, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just with regard to the table that you prepared, yes, I'd find it easier to read if you could say shade each alternate item, because it's a bit hard to follow where sometimes it seems that the heading on the first column, sometimes it's the bottom, and it's a little bit difficult with my feeble brain to tie those together. I'm really interested in the progress that's being made. Actually, could I just back up to the metal strengthening issue? You said there's just under 3,500 cubic metres of metal applied for roads. How far would a metre go in lineal terms, in terms of the run of a road?
I'd have to do the math, but you're probably looking at a couple of metres.
Yeah.
You know, when you get a
4 metres wide.
Yeah, so 4 times 1 times say 0.1.
Yeah.
Yep. My brain's not good enough to do that math quickly.
Try and get an idea of how many metres of road actually has had the treatment.
Yeah, generally a truck and trailer of aggregate we'd do over about 20 metres would sort of bring that up around that sort of 100 millimetres. So.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation again. I have a few questions, Blair. Some of them are, I hear work has been done on Davidge and this side. I didn't hear much about those roads. So what I can do is I can just tell you the questions I have and then you quickly answer. So one, you said that water tabling has been done for 3 kilometers. What percentage of the total water tabling required it is? My second question is, you mentioned about rural connectors as a significant portion, 42% in the district. There is a map there, but I would like to know, I got a very long letter for Arapuhi Road. I don't know whether it is a rural connector or not. Some of the roads are in shambles, so I would like to know something more about those rural connectors, what we are doing. The waterproofing, again, what is the extent of waterproofing required versus what you have done? Because you said it's a real issue, so I'd like to know what are the issues so we can solve them. And then again, some of the things I would like to know how you operate in terms of Antino request, KDC and all, because some of the requests may not be, like I put one a few weeks ago about a neighbor saying that whole rubbish is not being looked after and he is collecting it and it's going in the drainage. That's Paruri Road in Dargaville. I put a request in there. I don't know where it will end up. So these are my some questions. Thank you. So I can repeat them as you need.
Just to give, I think to answer your first question, if you talk about how many meters of, how much percentage of water tables done, if you think about your network is 1,600 kilometres, so times that by 2, 3,200, divide it by and you'll get your percentage.
So 1 kilometre in there is hardly 3% even, not even 3%.
Yep.
So I would like to know what is to be done and how much money we need. You always talk about the budget being short. When it comes to Pahi, it comes to Dargaville, but it's not short when it comes to Devich Road and Black Swamp Road. So I'd like to know, are you getting a fair share being spent or not?
Well, we don't, as I think we've said previously, we're pretty agnostic when it comes to deciding what roads get done around the district, and it's really based on demand and issues on the road. So we don't tend to split up the spending for specific parts of the community. We just take it as faults and issues on the network. So that's how we work out our Forward Works program. It's based on faults and severity and priority. So we try to prioritise, I guess, where the most demand is, where the most traffic and that sort of thing is on the network. So that's how we develop our Forward Works program. From a strengthening point of view, just want to touch on that. So we're just pulling together the Forward Works program at the moment around the metal strengthening. There's a long list at this stage of about over 100 sections of road that the team want to be able to deal with from an unsealed road strengthening point of view. We're just consolidating that at the moment, and at the next council meeting we'll be in a position to bring to you the Forward Works program across all of the different activities. So we'll have all your roads that are outlined for reseals, all your roads that are outlined for rehabilitation, minor safety projects. There's 23 minor safety projects being put forward, which would make up part of that resilience funding that KDC have received, that $3 or $4 million. So those projects have all been put forward into a pot. And I guess what we're doing now is going through field validating those. So we go out, we look at them, we measure up the faults that are on there, and then we program those for the upcoming season. So it's about trying to fit it into the budget as well. We have got a pretty big budget next year, to be honest, from a roading point of view. So it's really important that we get that program locked in and designs done before sort of October.
Lastly, the update on Pahi, please. If you mentioned 252708 having shear key issue. I don't know what shear key anyway.
Okay, just to recap. So if you've got a failure, basically half the lane's dropped out. So you've got a road there and one side just drops out. You can either try and retain it by putting a pole wall across the front, effectively a retaining wall, or which is quite expensive, or you can use what they call basically a reinforced soil slope, which is where you basically build a drainage blanket 2.5 metres in an in situ ground. You sort of dig it in a V, and then you build your road back up using these layers of geogrid. So you're effectively working from a principle that you're going to use the weight of the soil that you're putting back on a weight of the aggregate to hold the slip. One's called, it's effectively, one's just a simple mass wall and one's actually a retaining wall. So mass wall is basically reinforced soil flow, and a retaining wall is where you actually drill in holes, either anchors or whatever, and then key that in.
Thank you. So it will be done, I guess, this month, is it?
That's,
Parney Road is over 50% complete, so it'll be, they've probably got another 2 weeks there.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard, and then we'll move on to complete it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very good report, and great to see the progress. I had a couple of queries, but I have had 2 contacts from ratepayers just in the last 24 hours. It seems that unsealed roads, Gibbons Road, out towards Kaiwaka there, is, I had an email last night from a guy out there who said it was more like, 2 of them said like craters of the moon. And I think there's also a Facebook post on for Brown Road.
Yeah. So I can answer that. Browns Road, I wrote that this morning. Just to put it in the context, Browns Road, we haven't graded that road for nearly 6 months.
Yeah.
That's how long it's lasted since we last graded it. So it's really drainage money. We've only patched it every now and again. At the moment, all it needs now is patching. So it's a very isolated areas. Those photos were taken from an area that we constantly had a problem with at the very start of the road, where there's a really big driveway and it's quite wide there, and it's hard to get across there. That's where those problems will develop.
That's where
those photos are from.
I think it was last time.
Yeah, exactly.
The range said it was exactly, exactly the same. There was a number of crossings.
So I mean, the grader is in this area this month. So the program sort of, okay, it's maybe a week behind. We've got a week earlier, we may would have not had these complaints.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we're finding is that people are going straight to social media and not going to the call centre. And giving us some early warning, we could have dealt with it before it got to this stage.
Yeah.
So if they gave us a call 2-3 weeks earlier, probably got there and minimise the impact in that way.
Yeah, well, that one for Brown Road was just last night.
Yeah. So, yeah. But that hadn't happened overnight. It's going to be like that for a bit. But they could have told us a bit earlier. We could have dealt with it right earlier.
That's cool. So what I'm interested in is, we hear a lot about the progress and everything that has undoubtedly been made. So we're left with things as far as uncompleted and the likes. So what are the key factors that you guys have learned? Now, you've been doing it for a couple of years now, already this last year is a full 12 months.
12 months with that.
Yeah, 12 months. So what have you learned now that will really take the program ahead leaps and bounds next year?
Cross-fall and drainage.
Cross-fall and drainage. Yep.
That's what you told us.
Yeah. But I think just to I guess to add into that, and if you think about the significant weather you've had in the past 6 months, and if you think about the impact that's had on the network, I think it's something to consider, because that I guess that what that tells us is that the resilience is improving, because you're not getting the big dropouts, you're not getting the culverts washing out. If you think about we're fixing storm repairs now from way back in 2021. The reality is we're not getting the big repairs now. So I think that's, 23, is it? Sorry.
Yeah,
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that overall, if you think about the heavy rain we've had, especially since probably Easter, that first, there hasn't been a lot of damage to the network. So what that tells me is that the resilience is improving. I won't say it's perfect, because it's absolutely not. It's a big network, but it is improving. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we've learned, is that the more you spend on drainage and crossfall, like Mark says, in the unsealed road network, the better we can maintain it, I guess. We're always going to get potholes. That's just life, because it's not sealed. So it's trying to make sure that our grading cycles are right and tweaked, and even like from a demand point of view, if you think that, someone said to me this morning, there's a big, what's the road was called? Okapeki, that road. And so that's been closed. So that's, that's just been opened up to logging. So that wasn't a road that was on our horizon previously because of the, the change in demand, I guess. So that's the sort of thing we have to sort of balance and try to, be here, there, everywhere. So that's probably the biggest lesson.
Chief Executive Jason Maris just wanted to.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I just what I just wanted to highlight was a little bit about what you said, Mark, and also Councillor Naya as well around the service requests. We have a proper process here that actually works really well. I've engaged with the service request myself, and I know that Carolyn, the Downers team, is pretty bloody fantastic at getting onto those and getting them out to the crews, right? So, so I appreciate there's individual requests come through leader members. Please encourage them to do the service request system, because then we can keep a track of it and keep a record of it. It gets sent out officially to the teams, and I know they're really efficient in this space. And then we can, follow it up, and we have a record of it as well. So just, it's not rocket science, right? But just if people in the community do come to you, please encourage them to do that, because it's the best way of getting achievement out of it.
Councillor Wilson Collins and then Councillor Williams, and then we'll carry on with the presentation. Thank you.
We're not finished the presentation. I'm happy to wait for the presentation to finish.
No, I think we've got 1 or 2 slides to go, so not long, and then.
Finish it off.
Yeah, thank you. I think the next slide was just relating to what was planned for June. So what would have been completed, obviously, with that sort of report cycle out. So you can see from the mapping, the unsealed roads program, to concentrating in the south to west of the Kuiper network. Mark could probably talk more about it if there's any questions, but a number of roads there with a cubic metre metal target on them. And Blair has already touched on the slips program through June and where we are with the current progress of those ones. Fairly heavy planned maintenance vegetation program through June as well. And the last side is around finance and commercial, so where we are with spend. So you can see from the envelope of spend there that as of the end of May, we're very, very close to being basically delivering that whole budget for FY 24-25. I think last May would have been a target number at that stage, because Dion wouldn't quite have known what the spend was, but I know that we're very close to that 3.8 in mid-May, so on target to spend budget. Last note is that won't go into huge detail, but basically we're still on target and meeting our 30% requirement for subcontractors, and there's a little list of those that have been added to the subcontractor list there. So Parata Contractors, BSG, Masons and Tulip. And that was the end of the roading presentation. I don't know whether, Chris, you wanted to talk about whether we do questions first.
Yeah, I'll just really quickly, just as a bit of a summary. So in the next report, you'll also see a bit of a change. So we've just finalised the service level performance measures for the integrated team. So we've just finalised those now. So you'll start to see a series of graphs and targets that we'll be trying to meet throughout the years for different activities. So everything from response to RFS to how many kilometres of reseal we plan to do per annum. And I suppose that's quite a good answer, I think, to your question earlier, Councillor Naya, was from a waterproofing point of view, our target is to try to waterproof 8% of the network per annum, which basically leads to a seal life of about 12 to 14 years, which is pretty good, and it's pretty well on target. So our target is to seal 8% this year. Stretch target is 9%, because obviously budget and that pre-reseal repairs. So while you might have the money to do the reseals, The pre-reseal repairs is the challenging part because that comes out of your general maintenance budget. So that's just a barrier for us. So I guess we really want to try to target sealing at least 8% of the network per annum to improve that waterproofingness. So you'll see those targets start to come through in the next report, and we'll be reporting progress against those on a month. There's 20 odd service performance measures that you'll see in there. So we'll report those next month. And as I said earlier, you'll also get a full list of the Forward Works program to view on what we're targeting to do, those individual roads. So you'll see next year there is quite a few, definitely down towards the Dargaville roads, Dargaville Way. So there's Potu, there's Victoria Street, there's a couple of others that are programmed for rehabilitation, and most of the reseals are actually in that area as well for next year.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson Collins.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. Really good. I'll let you finish because I think you've partially answered one of my questions and I remembered another question. So just the comment that was made about the integrity of the network after all this rain, I think that's really fantastic and a real credit to the work that's been going on. So it's good and it's a relief because I think we've in previous years, in recent years, every time it started to rain heavy, the community's panicked because there's been quite a bit of devastation. So I think it's probably, a bit of a relief out there. So hopefully that can continue and reliance on the network can be relied upon. I have 3 questions. Going back to the going back to the resealing, and I think you've partly answered this question. I was just after a sort of a high level understanding of the prioritisation because there has been quite a bit of resealing done in Dargaville, and the usual from the community are that roads that don't need resealing are getting resealed. So, and you've touched on the pre-seal budget. I'm assuming that this is a factor. Can you just give me a quick, so I can explain to people who ask me how that actually works?
Yep. So while you might not be able to see it, and you can't see it physically because it's micro cracking, and that's the biggest issue, right? So it's the micro cracks that the water gets in. Once the water gets in, that's what. So what we try to do from an asset management point of view is we try to hit it just before failure, if that makes sense. So, we try to get the most life out of that asset that we can, and we try to target it. So we base it on a whole lot of, variables. So age of the seal, pavement condition, the amount of faults that are starting to appear on the network. So if it's starting to get a lot of faults in that treatment section, that's what flags to us, we need to do something about that, right? So we have a whole lot of different mechanisms that sort of tell us that prioritisation. We always come up with a list that's probably 200% more than what we can afford to do, and then we try to prioritise it based on, okay, which ones then is from a demand point of view. So those are the sorts of things that we bring in. So it's purely a data-driven decision-making process. There's no emotional decisions made. It is purely data-driven. Really.
So am I correct that if the road's too far gone and you have to do the pre-sealing repairs, then that becomes, so it may be that there's a road that really needs to be done, but there's a budget issue here. So we're getting on and doing this other road, and that may be why the community might. Yeah,
exactly right. Exactly. So you might pick some roads because you can afford to do the reseal and it doesn't have any repairs on it. You still do the reseal. So it's like painting your house. You still paint it because you want to keep it waterproof. What you don't want to do is let the boards go rotten. So that's what that's sort of approach, I guess.
For a little old Joe Blogs like me. The other thing in the resealing is Gordon Street and Gladstone Street in Dargaville. Something happened there, and I raised a service request on that. There was, I was just wondering if I could get I did get emails back, but the residents weren't happy that the fix was actually a fix. There was leaching into the drains. What can you advise me about that one?
Yep. Was that the one with the emulsion runoff? Okay, so I'm not 100% sure of the site personally, but I guess from what I understand, weather. So it was sealed with emulsion. So emulsion's a water-based product. It can be susceptible really early. It needs time to break and time to set. Generally takes about 6 hours. So we look at that weather window and we're trying to judge, and so in that case, the rain came too quick and you got that emulsion runoff. The team, from my understanding, went out there to just try to remediate that. I haven't seen it since then, so that's probably all I can answer. I don't know.
Yeah, but you say it's a water-based product, so if it ran into the drains, is that completely okay, or is that?
No. It is more environmentally friendly than bitumen, because bitumen's an oil and diesel-based product, so.
No, because that's the concern from the residents, yeah. It just as an aside, it looked like they went and tried to sort out half of it, but didn't do half of it, so that there. And then the last question that I have is just on the finance there, just the monthly spend, just an understanding there about March, April and May being kind of twice as much as the other month. Is that because that's like the optimal time to be?
Yep, that's the ceiling. So that's the big part of it, right? So that's when you did most of your reseals, and that's basically $3.5 million of your entire budget.
Yeah.
So that gets spent in that time, because that is
to do it.
Yes, yeah, earlier better in my view, but that's just the reality of demand everywhere, I think.
Yeah. So much.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question. I did send them this morning, but it was on Settlement Road.
Yep.
I've had a query if I don't know if the road has actually been graded within the program yet, and I had people saying to me about the potholes, and you can't actually dodge them. They're on both sides of the road now.
So we patched most of the potholes on that road. They're just finishing off that road, but that's program for grading.
Oh, great. Okay.
The whole program for grading that's like.
Okay. I'll let my.
And that road there again has been touched for 5 months for grading. It didn't require it, so it's lasted that long. Well,
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for that. And just one more question to Blair. I know that Kurt's been the lead on the Mangawhai piece slip.
That might be.
Yeah, I just wondered if I ask every month, but is there any updates on that slip? Thank you.
Through Chair. At the moment, we're working with the landowner, and the landowner's doing a survey of the site to ascertain the value of that site. We've put a purchase order in for the removal of the power poles. Once we have that land, power poles, we've project manager allocated to us from Vector. It's moving forward, not as fast as we'd like.
Okay, thank you. But it's good to hear there's some progress.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. Next up, we have the land transport procurement strategy with Chris and Nick.
Hey, thank you. So just here to present briefly on the Kaipara District Council Land Transport Procurement Strategy for 2005-2007. So just to give you a quick bit of background, I started working on this with Annan back 12 months ago. Once the Northern Transport Alliance finished up, so previous procurement strategy was developed by that organisation for the 3 district councils. So been working on that, and we're at a stage now where it's ready for endorsement. So really today is just a quick presentation on why we have to have it. So really it's a requirement from the Land Transport Act 2003 that every local authority organisation has an approved procurement strategy through NZTA. They also require, I guess, that long-term strategy covers all procurement for transport that they're involved in funding for. So anything that they contribute to needs to be included in that procurement strategy. And it also needs to be consistent with the with NZTA's procurement manual, version 6, and also with the Local Government Act, especially around sections 14 and 77 that specifically require value for money decision-making in that procurement strategy. So we've been working on developing that. So just to give you an overview of the procurement strategy. So because it was a 3-year strategy, it was specifically based around recovery of those extreme weather events from 2003, developing in-house capability and capacity to manage the roading function after the closure of the NTA, improved interface, I guess, with council's home system. So that was something that came out of your Section 17A review, that you really wanted more, I guess, visibility over systems and processes from a roading point of view. Accountability, obviously, to political representatives in the community through those decision-making structures. So that's around how you procure your projects and contracts going forward, and responsiveness and agility to respond to those emergency works. So really it was I guess, an interim procurement strategy for that 3-year period. We're now at the end of that, or nearing the end of that, and now need to think about the next procurement process. So your current contract finishes 30th of June 2027. So we really need to start work in the next 12 months on what that next procurement looks like. So what we've done is we've followed the NZTA procurement manual, which is based on those 4 key sections there. So strategic context, so that's really the why and what you want to achieve from your roading into the future. We then look at what's the best delivery model to deliver those needs and wants. So an example, just to give you an example, might be, if it's all about funding, then you might look at lowest price conforming type contracts. Whereas if you're thinking longer term and about strategy and integration and that sort of type of thing, you look at integrated service delivery teams and those different types of contract models. Then you move through to the supplier selection processes, which is where you decide what that model will be, how you're going to go to the market for your roading activities, and then finally, what is the contract documentation that's required around that. So that's all included in the procurement strategy that's been developed. Just a couple of just points to note. So it does incorporate the outcomes identified in that Section 17A review that you did back in, I think it was November, but approved just before the new contract started. I think you did that with Frank Aldridge from the Integral Group. We're looking to get this procurement strategy endorsed for a term of 3 years, so through to June 2028. We have put forward a variation to NZTA's procurement manual, which is around the, I guess, increasing the small value work that you can actually, dollar value that you can actually tender out. So increasing that, I think it's at the moment, it's sitting around 100,000 and 200. So we've asked to be, if we can have that extended to 200 and 400. I'll just put a caveat out there. It's probably unlikely that we will get that approved. I know Whangarei District Council tried to do it as well, and theirs was pushed back, so they weren't able to do that. And the reason behind that was NZTA are apparently doing a review on those numbers across all of their procurement manual. So not sure that we'll get that across the line, but it's worth having a go. Because that also helps reduce the cost of procurement, I guess. So the things that Blair's doing at the moment around the slip work, that would fall into that category, right, to get that better value for money. There are no advanced components. So the advanced components in the procurement strategy are, if you're looking at an alliance or that shared risk model, that requires a higher level of approval from NZTA. So there's none of that in this procurement strategy. And and at this stage, we've kept to the 5-year NZTA procurement strategy term. Although what I would say is that NZTA are quite amenable to extending that term if it adds value for money. So that's something we can go back to NZTA before the next procurement and say, we'd like to make the next contract 9 years or 10 years or whatever it wants to, or even 3 years, whatever it wants to be, we can go back to NZTA and do that. So at this stage, we're just putting this up for endorsement. It has gone to NZTA for comment, so we've sent it in parallel just so that we're not waiting either way. Once we get feedback from NZTA and feedback from yourselves, then we'll finalise that procurement strategy for the next 2 years. Yes.
Councillor Nair, then Councillor Williams, then Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Chair. From the governance perspective, procurement strategy rings a lot of alarm bells to us. So I would like to know a couple of, one, obviously, the variation that you said you're suggesting NZTA will not agree. So I don't know what are the good reasons you're proposing that it should be accepted just to make it simpler. And you also mentioned that your number one priority in, I think, the 2 slides before was to look at resilience from weather events which happened in 2023. This is number 1 item. I'd like to know what percentage we are resilient now, or we still not spend the money there. So that's 2 slides before that, if you know. Yeah. And if you can answer these 2 questions, maybe it's good enough. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I guess just from I guess the reason why we've asked for that money to be lifted is that 100, basically every procurement that you need to go out to for 100K, anything over 100K, you would have to tender on the open market under the current procurement strategy. So under the current procurement manual. So what we're asking is that, and those numbers have been the same for the last 10 years. So those numbers haven't changed, and whereas inflation and everything else gone up, right? So what we're trying to do is save KDC money through less procurement. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why we haven't asked it just to make things easier. We've asked it to try to get better value for money out of your procurement, the different procurement that you do. So that answers the first question. I guess regarding the resilience, you know, that's a strategic outcome, very hard to measure. As I said earlier, it's looking at what impact weather events have on your network, and back in 2003, massive impact. But what we're seeing now is less impact. So the procurement strategy is a legislative requirement. So it's not just something we're doing for the sake of it. We have to do it. And for you to get your funding from NZTA, you have to have an approved procurement strategy. So I guess that's the reason.
So just supplementary. So thank you, Chair. Is that we had an instance where the NZTA did not approve about 20 million of our works last year. And they were subsidized, but they didn't go through. So is the procurement strategy by variations, will it become harder for us to get money from NZTA?
Sorry, Councillor Nair, I'll just get General Manager Sue Davidson to chip in here, because I'm not sure that what you're saying is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't 20 million, it was 1 million. From
Sorry?
1 million. No. It was only 1 million, not 20 million.
No, I'm talking about some of the projects we were doing in Mangawhai, but not approved by NZTA. And we had 38% subsidy signed towards that. The procurement strategy is one issue, which is very, very crucial. It has to be NZTA standard. So the question I'm asking is it going to affect our further subsidies just because we are nudging too much in it?
No, I guess the answer to that is that they're separate processes and separate. You have to have one to do the other, but they're not linked as such in that space. So your funding applications are a separate activity undertaken through your activity management plan, whereas this is your procurement strategy on then how you're going to buy those services in to do that work for that budget.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson Collins.
Was I next? That's exciting. I thought you were next.
It's fine, we go.
Reprioritised.
There were just two things that jumped out at me, and I don't know if these are actually questions for you or whether they're questions for the CE. The first one was on page 6 of the procurement strategy document under number 3, legislative and policy framework. Just those bullet points there about the goods and services being consistent with the principles of local government and conducting our business in an open, transparent and democratically accountable manner. We have had some criticism on that. How do we make sure that happens?
I guess by following that contract, that the last two parts of them, if we just go back to the those couple of slides. So that's really in where you're starting to develop up, your supplier selection methods. So that's really important that you follow the rules around that to ensure fair competitiveness. That's a requirement. And that the contract that we develop, the documents are also in line with the manual. So the first two parts are sort of your strategic, the strategic part of procurement, making your decisions around what you want to get. The last two pieces are how you do it and how you work within the rules to do it. So the procurement strategy has been developed specifically in line with NZTA's procurement manual, follows it basically to the letter, with the exception of that one variation that we've requested, and we've put that right up front in the executive summary. We're requesting this to save money for council. Their decision will be what it will be, I guess.
So what would the repercussions be if that wasn't followed?
Well, it just means that basically, if we didn't follow it?
If we didn't follow open, transparent,
And democratically accountable.
Democratically accountable.
Yep, so I guess there are some risks to that. Probably can go to jail if you do it really badly. But I guess, it's just making sure that transparency is there in your processes and procedures and that you can defend what you're doing. You could lose the funding, I guess, if although highly unlikely still, but it can have an impact on your funding if you don't follow the rules, I guess. So that's what we're advocating in here, to follow the rules.
Good. Yep. Yeah. Nice. Yep. And the other bit that jumped out was page 9. Point number 5, I just want to understand the intent of this one. So it says improved governance, management and administration. Council have identified a need to have better oversight over the governance, management and administration of the transfer activities within the Kaupapa region.
Yep.
Does that?
Yep. So that came directly from your section 17A review that was developed, where there was a specific point in there. So I've just included that for, for full coverage of your section 17A. So it's just around, I guess that was part of the original decision to bring your roading activity back in-house so that you had visibility and ownership of it.
My question is, who's overseeing the governance?
So we have a governance board for the road maintenance contract, which includes Jason and Nick and a couple of people, senior people from Downer and staff. So those are the people that are overseeing the governance, I guess, of the activity. Along with council, elected members, I guess, through this forum.
Okay, councillor.
I'm not, sorry, no, it's the word oversight that throws me a bit. Is it meant to be that we need to have better governance, management and administration? I've got it clear.
With the permission of the CE, my talk to
them. Sure.
Thanks. Only because I'm not presenting on a slide. But your section 17A, one of the items that came up was what council were feeling was the disconnect between the activities that the NTA were doing and their prioritisation and the funding that you were allocating. You weren't seeing the dollars that you were going into the area. So what the council asked for was the ability to
refocus or at times prioritise more of the program. So for example, unsealed, you could ask for budgets to be shifted, which is where the Mayor and Deputy, as Chris just touched on, sit on that board and can help, because John is one of the senior members. So Chris and I are not members of that. We're external, but the message was that council wanted the ability to ensure that what they felt they were putting through in their long-term plan, like greater resilience, was being reflected in the actions that were there.
Yeah.
So that's the connection. Sorry, thank you.
If I can just chip in, Mr Chair, excuse me, and so
Seeing the governance is the all-arching overseer to me, so that's why I'm getting stuck on it.
okay. There are a lot of processes involved, right? And, overarching decision-making is by council, actually, and so I want to recognise that too. That's why we're coming to you today with this procurement strategy, and it will be adopted by council, right? There is an operational governance group, which is what Blair's talking about, and that is around identifying the contract and making sure that's going to track and all that sort of stuff. But I do want to reflect that all decisions about, priorities, as indicated by the team this morning, with the future work program for the next financial year, as an example, we're going to present to council so that you see that and you understand that, and give feedback on that. And then we, what we are doing and what the roading team are actually delivering for the year, right? So there's quite a few rules to this, actually, but I just want to also reflect that council is the decision maker.
So it's the council table.
Yes.
That holds the responsibility for this.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah.
So this is purely a council. This is nothing to do with your current contract or your contract, or it's a completely separate thing to that. This is outside of that, yes.
Yeah, so it's up to us to have the.
Yeah, and just to really clarify that other governance, I use the word governance loosely, right, because then it gets confused everybody, to be honest. But that is actually set up to try and make sure that the contract's working well, that everything's getting delivered okay, and that's what that's for.
Right.
But decision making absolutely sits with this council around the table.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, three people, for having to explain that to me.
Thank you. We're going to have three more questions and then we'll move on. That's Williams, Vincent and Paniora. Williams, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, on page 6, it says, I think it's the last point, encourage collaboration for collective impact. I wanted to kind of get my head around the council collaboration and perhaps border roads that two councils are actually looking after and maintaining, and having maybe a bit more oversight on what the other council is doing in that space, just as a way of maybe finding some efficiencies and things there. This might not be the actual.
Yep.
Wanted to ask your thoughts on it, really.
Yeah, I guess, we really, where you're going to get the best value for money is if you're collaborating with all different entities, whether it's a bordering council or whether it's service providers or whatever it is. So I guess that's part of your decision, your strategic decision-making context is that, for example, you might want to let a seal extension project that borders to neighbouring local authorities. This document tells you how to do that rather than telling you that you have to do it. It just tells you what are the options you've got to be able to to collaborate.
Yep, so there is scope within this document for that to go broader.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I just wanted to check.
Yep.
Obviously, there's benefits there.
Yep. Very much. This is a strategic procurement document, not a set in stone. This is your intent for the next 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
And do you mind if I just jump in? So, from an operational perspective, when you're looking at those boundaries, we do have service level agreements between the council and let's say Auckland Council, because they're looking south at the moment. And there are times when we do collaborate on that space, and Kames Road will be an example of that, where we're trying to work with the Auckland Council, the same contractor, to deliver efficiencies and get a better product on that road for the community as well. So it is happening at the moment, but it could be done more, of course.
Yeah, and that's why I just wanted to raise it, because I think there's more things we could do in that space.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just a process question, really. It hadn't really occurred to me, although I'd read it, but it didn't register, in terms of compliance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. I would have thought this is in the nature of a sort of internal operating policy rather than something that's interacts with the public. I mean, is there somewhere further on where we would consulting with the community about this, or that's not necessarily appropriate?
From my perspective, through you, Mr. Chair, no, there's no need to consult.
Okay, well, that sort of confirms what my thinking was. I just wanted to check on that. Thank you.
Councillor Paniora.
Thank you, through the chair. I have two questions. So who is the lead contractor for contract 1033?
So the lead contract is Downer for that contract, for your current contract.
Okay, and the second question that I have relates to some of the comments that you've made around this just being the intent of the organisation. The Land Transport Agency requires the procurement strategy. It says that it must take a long-term perspective outlining how the organisation will procure goods and services over 3 or more years. So I think it goes a little bit more than just an intention. This is really where the rubber hits the road, and we set down on the table what our procurement strategy is going to be. I also want to premise my comments with the fact that we're setting in stone, and I don't know why we need to do it now, but we're setting in stone a procurement strategy that goes outside of our mandate period. I think that this is something that's better to be finalised with the incoming councillors, because it locks them into something into the future, into a strategy into the future. What I just wanted to, I suppose, question for my second part of it is that at page 4 of the document, it actually, what we're doing is we're doing two things where the council, the organisation, is seeking for us to endorse this procurement strategy, but at page 4 of the document, it's actually asking NZTA to also endorse the procurement strategy. It says that at page 4, it is recommended that NZTA 1 endorse this procurement strategy for a term of 3 years through to 30 June 2028. My issues relate to page 8 of the document, and specifically where it says that as a result of KDC have settled on the following until 30 June 2027, at point 3, procure a lead contractor for the road maintenance and renewals contract, and then use the newly procured maintenance and renewals contract as a testing ground. I don't know when we all definitely agreed that that would all go, that would go through to 2027. And so can you just explain to me, is that what we're doing? So are we setting in stone a procurement strategy that is almost entirely outside of our mandate period, 2, endorsing that today, and then 3, going to be asking for NZTA to endorse it when we come to vote on this decision?
Do you want me to answer that?
Give it a go, and then I can.
Yeah. Okay. So firstly, you have to. It's an internal council KDC document. I guess as governance, I guess your role is to either endorse it or not. The information that's in there from the section 17A, which is where you decide, that was council's decision. That's your documentation. I've just taken your documentation, put it into the procurement strategy to meet the requirements. So regardless of elected members changing, you're still required to have a procurement strategy as part of your NZTA funding. They're funding you 66, whatever the percentage is. It's a requirement. So without having that in place, you really can't procure anyone to do anything unless you've got an approved procurement strategy. So that's the reason why you have to have it. I don't think you can wait personally, but.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there as well. So
Yeah, because we
thank you.
haven't had it until, we haven't had this come across our table until today. So why is it that we can't wait until, towards the end of the year? Or even into the beginning of the year if we haven't had it this whole year?
Because your current one runs out at that time. So you're currently still operating under the NTA procurement strategy.
And so what sort of caveat would we be able to put in place to make it so that the next lot of councillors that come in aren't locked into this particular strategy and can be flexible with it if they so wish?
Yep. So you can change this strategy at any time leading up till the end of it. The only time you need to go back to NZTA, once they endorse it, they've endorsed it. So the only time you would need to go back to them is if you are changing it significantly from a procurement point of view. And that's why I said in there at the start, there's no advanced components. So there's nothing that needs higher approval. So we've tried to keep the procurement strategy as flexible and open-ended as possible so that you can make those changes if and when new council comes in. So you can change right up till your next procurement.
Could I just add in that, Mr. Chair, as well? And I just want to make a point about the elections, right? So, elections are a 3-year process, as you well know. Doesn't mean you can't make decisions leading up to that election, okay? So, you are required to continue to make decisions. We are required to have this strategy. That's why it's in front of you today. Give us your feedback and then we'll bring it for adoption. So we have a strategy, we can access the funding and we can give it to NZTA to endorse. It doesn't need to be made too hard, I don't think, I also acknowledge that, the RTC, the Regional Transport Committee, is set up and has involvement as well. So there is quite a bit of a process around all of this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. So what we'll do now is we'll just have a quick 5-minute break and we'll have our morning tea after the project delivery update. So the project delivery update will be next. We'll start that at 10:42. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Next, we're moving on to the project delivery update. Kim and Brian and Hayley online. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you through the chair, and good morning, councillors. I appreciate you. The project delivery report was only received on Monday via Kelly's emails with attachments, so apologies for the lateness of that report. We were impacted by staff leave, year-end annual planning requirements, and a lot of various tasks around the fact that it was June. So that means that there's been no significant changes to the overall report or any updates that we've completed. So you'll need to make sure that we just follow the content that Kim will read. I'll hand it to her for those key highlights, and then we're happy to take questions. Kim.
Thank you, Hayley. Through the chair, good morning, and good morning to elected members.
Good morning.
So yeah, we'll take the report as read, hopefully. Again, apologies at the late notice of it. But our update, 40 of 89 projects have been delivered, with 36 of those, or 90%, within available budgets. Of the 47 that are partially delivered, so they've all spread over 2 years, we have 30% of those in the planning stage. So we've already kicked off the initiation and moved it through to the next phase. 40% are in design or tender, and the remaining 30% are in the execution stage. So there's been good progress made on those partially delivered projects. To give you an update on what's happening with those that we're moving into the next financial year, 62% are scheduled to be delivered this calendar year. That's gone down slightly since we last reported because there's been some more movement of multi-year projects, and 14 or 30%, which are 14 or 30% of those are multi-year projects, and 4, which is 8%, are likely to extend into 2026. So overall, there's been a 54% increase in capital spend as of May 25 versus May 24. So that's really significant given the level of challenges we've had this year in terms of staff shortages and the risks that we've outlined in previous project reports. We are really pleased to report that a lot of those vacancies that affected the program this year are being filled. So we're excited looking into next year to have full teams, particularly in the operations space. The manager of operations was a key position responsible for a lot of the program. And we can see that reflected in the Three Waters space with what's been completed. So having that leadership there to drive those outcomes, we think is going to make a big difference. And we'll hope to smash that target even further in terms of what we're delivering. We've also had a successful appointment in the asset management space, so that the asset manager is responsible for planning the projects. So internal staff have had to cover that. So that's another significant win, looking forward to the program next year. The two, I think, that are outstanding are our project delivery internal project managers, and I think Brian might mention that later on in the report. We also put quite a big focus on delivering our externally funded projects. We've seen in the past that sometimes because we haven't acted fast enough on them, we've lost funding. So it was really important that we prioritise those early. So 15 of those 22 projects, or 68%, have now been delivered. Project delivery team has successfully negotiated some extensions on a couple that we've had to push out. So that's also really positive news. So of the remaining 7 projects, 5 are scheduled to be completed this calendar year and 2 extending into 2026. But well in motion. I'll just hand over to Brian now to take you through some of the program delivery risks that we're highlighting to you. So Brian.
Good morning, everyone. Be the chair. So basically, we just want to highlight a few staffing risks, obviously that you're aware of, but we've had to engage external project managers to basically speed up and enable us to deliver the number of projects we are currently delivering. So that's obviously It's a bit of a risk as far as internal staff, but it's a balancing act between the two to ensure we maintain efficient delivery. As mentioned, staff retention is key to delivering the program. There's a number of staff appointments that we made, and obviously some yet to be filled, so I won't go into great detail there. But I will say that we've managed to secure a new project manager to the project delivery team, so we're hoping that he can start on the 14th, so that's good news for us, and that will enable us to deliver a bit more efficiently and take a bit of workload off the current staff at the moment. So just running through the projects themselves. So obviously the first project there that's listed is the Dargaville Northern Memorial Hall, and as you're aware, we're undergoing at the moment a procurement review and obtaining advice, expert advice. So that's underway. So we'll be able to feed back in the next meeting, obviously. Pahi new wastewater dispersal field, we're just highlighting that. We're awaiting tenders to confirm the forecast cost to complete. We're just looking at some options around the location of this at the moment, and that will basically determine our completed design and then in turn determine the completed cost for the project.
Yeah, I'll just, if you don't mind. So where we're highlighting it as orange for you, we're saying we're aware that the budget is tight, basically. But in this case, we have actually identified other savings across other projects that we've been able to allocate to it. But we are just saying, look, we're watching this one. Tenders will confirm whether we've got the right budget set there or not.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim. Also listed there, Tinapai Wharf renewal. You'll be aware, hopefully you're aware, the wharf is actually currently closed due to safety risks to the public. As mentioned there, we have actually completed the marine condition assessment, marine engineers condition assessment, and it has come back as a pretty severe risk to the public. So 9 out of the 40 piles need immediate replacement. All of the decking, all of the handrails, the stairs, so it's, and the bracing all need replacing. So we're having an internal meeting tomorrow actually to just review the report internally and look at a way forward. And
Ryan, can I just interrupt for 2 ticks? Do you mind moving the presentation slightly forward? Because still on the first slide.
Sorry about that.
And I assume you're talking to that, right?
We're just talking to the report.
Okay, sorry. My bad.
That'll kick in a bit later.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's, we'll come back to you obviously with further information with the outcome of that. Dargaville Beach Road, just highlighting there, the tenders have come in above the current budget. We're looking at obtaining some additional funding through transfer funding from other Dargaville flood protection budgets within the region. So that's, we're working on coping with that internally through current budgets. That's, although we're highlighting that as a risk, we're managing that and believe we can still deliver it.
Yeah.
So there's successful delivery there on the radar, but we'll update you on that. Tarawa Domain, Pine Beach Pollution Block, just highlighting there that the engineer's estimate is coming in at up to 1.3 million. We have a current budget of 1.1. So we will be seeking some additional funding. So we'll update you at the next council meeting. We're looking at.
Can I add to that one as well? Through the chair, I'll just add to that for context. The original budget that was proposed was around 1.7 million and council asked to pull that back. So I just wanted to give that context that staff did originally propose a higher budget for the ablution blocks as well. But what we're looking to deliver is the wastewater treatment plant first, because that's the compliance part that we need to do first. Yeah, so just highlighting it early. We can see that additional budget may be needed, and Brian will bring a report to you.
Councillor No, I'm just going to let them get through their presentation and ask you a question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Come back to it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Kaiwaka footpath improvements, that's looking good. Tender receivings to be delivered within available budget. Mangawhai Elmo Crescent Car Park, as you will be aware, previously approved 170k additional funding there. We're just highlighting that until the works are completed, or the excavation work is completed. There was a minor risk there, but it's looking good at this stage. They're just closing out the final excavation work basically as we speak. They did find a very small midden under the footpath, which is the last area. So that's currently being looked at, but we're hoping that won't come to much. And the budget's still intact and looking good at this stage. And that's basically the risk is listed. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Brian. So yeah, we've attached the summary there, and of course, if you've got any questions, please let us know. So importantly, in the open spaces and facilities, you'll see the majority of what is partially delivered is in design, tender or execution. We still have a few in planning. 2 of those are attached to pensioner housing project, so we expect those will be delivered quite quickly once those units are in place. And then, yeah, had quite a successful outcome in terms of what has been delivered in that space, which was a priority that elected members set in terms of the open spaces and facilities, increasing our work on that. So that's a good outcome. The next 3 activities, as I mentioned, have been impacted by those vacancies in both the planning and the operations leadership space. But yeah, we should see some significant movement coming, and again, majority are design or execution in that activity as well. Same for water. Don't think there's anything to highlight there. Yeah, I think we will just really open up for any questions.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have one.
So the question is obviously related to not so much to delay. I mean, it's a fact of life that if it's delayed, it's not denied, but it's expensive. So that's why you keep coming back to us. So quite a few projects we have which will not be completed, will be delayed. So which means they will become more expensive, right? That's the first question obviously I have. Specifically, I asked on 2 things. One of course, the wastewater treatment plant you mentioned is non-compliant. So I'd like to know how long it has been non-compliant. So because the cost is going to increase every time you delay it. And the same thing, I'm not going into pensioner housing. We know about that escalated, but the cost of inflation, because it's going to erode the value of the budget. What about town hall? Same story we know. So if you can tell me specifically about this treatment plant and any other projects relating to Dargaville, which is not being done. And because as a governance, it's ridiculous. I mean, for the last 2.5 years, I've been.
Councillor Nair, can you just ask your question? You're making a statement.
I'm not making a statement.
You are making a statement. So if you
I'm trying to say.
Will you not talk over me? I'm chairing the meeting.
You are talking over me, sir.
No, you are making bold statements to the staff. You are here to ask some questions. If you've got a question, ask it. Question.
The question is related to cost of inflation if you don't know. So that's what I'm trying to explain.
I've heard you ask that and
yeah,
you're going into an elaborate statement. So
I'm asking a question on 2 projects specifically. One is the Dargaville wastewater plant, repeating myself over the chair, is that how long it has been non-compliant, because we as a thing, we're going to put ratepayers more money every year. And the second question, obviously, on town hall. So why, what's the issue? Thank you. And why they are being delayed? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So you just pause for a second here, I think, team. So the Dargaville wastewater plant is compliant.
Taharoa domain. Yeah.
So, yeah, we're just going to.
So,
right.
That's the answer to that question, I believe.
I'll let Brian
Through the
answer.
chair, are you asking about the Taharoa domain?
No, I'm talking about the Dargaville wastewater treatment plant, which we are talking about at the.
Okay, so that's compliant. Answered. Question answered. And the other question was about the Dargaville Town Hall, which you made a decision on at the last council meeting.
No, we are talking about the delay and the cost increase. That's the question, basically, related to 2 projects.
What are you asking? Are you asking?
I'm asking what is the benefit of, how far we are behind and how far we are behind previous year. So I need to know how long we are hanging fire on these projects.
Through you, Mr. We're not hanging fire on any projects. We are pushing through as hard, and you would have heard from the team just now how much we're pushing through and how much we're delivering more than we were delivering the last year. So we are making significant progress in delivering in projects, and we're improving all the time, right? So inevitably, though, the budgets for some of these projects are set, a year, 2 years, 3 years earlier, right? And that's the reality of it. And when we get to program, and it's all programmed in the LTP, and when you get to start delivering these projects, you're right, costs have increased. And that's what the team are reflecting at the moment to you.
So my question in a nutshell is all about prioritizing the projects. The projects which were 3 years before, you should be prioritized, not take new projects and do them and let them leave. Because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, through the chair, we have focused on the carry projects that we've inherited first.
Yeah.
So we've got those, they've been our first priority.
Thank you.
And we do focus on those because we know that the budgets were set in the past, and to your point, yes, there's a risk that the costs will increase. Equally though, I will say that some budgets that are set, we are delivering well under budget. So staff are doing their best to offset where we can within existing budgets, and we've done that on many occasions over the last year. Where we've delivered something under budget, we have the delegated financial authority internally, if that's complete and we've delivered what we said we would, to use those savings and allocate them to projects where we know the budget's come in slightly over what was set. So we're trying to be as efficient as we can and managing things that way. But it's much like a house. You might have a plan and have an initial quote, but you get on the ground, there's different ground conditions that you encounter. Delays can happen in terms of, not having enough staff. We've definitely suffered from that. Also weather, there's a lot of different factors that can come into play when you're delivering projects of, which are largely different from putting a wastewater pipe in the ground to delivering a concept plan. So we do our best, Councillor Nair, and we'll continue to prioritise those long-standing projects so we can get them delivered.
That's awesome.
Councillor Paniora.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to quickly get through the questions that I have. I don't want to take up too much time. The first thing that I wanted to bring up is whether we can start to separate any of the Taharoa domain costs for projects out to their own separate budget, because that's we're getting income from Taharoa, and it's not necessarily the ratepayers that are paying for it, or it's not technically coming out of the rates, it's coming out of a lot of the income that we get for Taharoa. So I think that that's skewing the numbers a little bit, and it's probably and it's our only income or rather profit making asset that we have. The second thing that I wanted to just query was the reallocation of the $1 million Better Off funding for the treatment plant upgrades that was then came in well under budget, which is amazing, by the way, and that's really awesome work. But I just wanted to understand how the decision was made to then reallocate it to other water upgrades in Maungaturoto when the whakapapa or the funding came from Dargaville funding that was then reallocated to that project, when if we had have actually looked at what was more of a priority, I know it said it was a priority. Well, we've got we've got pipe upgrades that are very, very urgent and a priority here. So that's just kind of led me to want to understand how do we, within this new PMO office, sorry, I forget the acronym, how the office goes about these decisions now when there isn't underspend. Like, why does it not come back to the governing body, or where does it go, or how are those decisions made?
Thank you. Through the chair, the Better Off funding that was allocated to the Maungaturoto water treatment plant upgrade came through to council. I believe Hayley and Anand presented a paper.
No, I understand that. I understand all of that. What I'm asking is, so it was actually allocated to Dargaville, and then the councillors around the table, the majority of them reallocated it to that. So what I'm asking is, when there was that big leftover amount, why did it not come back for consideration, and why was it then just allocated to that area when it was originally supposed to be allocated to Dargle but got reallocated? That's my question.
So through the chair, staff carried through on council's direction was that it was reallocated to Mangatoroto. That was a decision made by council. So because it was in that area, we were only able to reallocate it within that area because that is the direction that we got from council. The process that happens internally, to explain that, is that there is delegated financial authority, which Jason and certain activity managers have. We have quite a good process around what happens with transfers. So we have a number of parameters that need to be met before we can transfer from one project to another, which looks at, is the substantive project fully complete? Do we know that all of those costs are covered? We then have our finance team do a check to make sure it's fiscally neutral, because that's part of the DFA. If it's not, we would have to come back to council and ask for your approval. So if it's within approved budgets, we have delegation to make that transfer, and that's all documented for an audit trail through the Project Management Office governance meetings.
Thank you. That answered my question very, very well. I just, maybe Jason can follow up on that, because I understood that it was reallocated to the project, not the locality, given that it needed to be redirected to other water projects. The last question that I had was just around, we still seem to be not getting a lot of the Dargaville projects done, and so how does that, so following on from that question that I had, and you've answered, that's really clear, is how do we then decide what projects are being pushed forward and what are to be sort of left on the back burner until other sort of projects have been worked on? Because I see a lot of the Dargaville projects still not being spent, the funding's still sitting there sort of unspent. So
through the chair, I do just, need to go back to your previous question to Councillor Paniora and confirm that we did reallocate the local share funding, not the Better Off funding, which is what is written in the report. I just wanted to clarify that part. So the Better Off funding was spent. There is some remaining.
Oh,
we
okay.
actually, just so I'm just.
Is that the 250,000? Because it was a little bit. Okay.
Which was from KDC funding. So we didn't need to go back to the external funder on that one. And then the second question around the prioritisation of projects. So we have had a number of projects closed out in Dargaville. There are a number that have been held up for different reasons, not necessarily because we haven't prioritised the delivery. But yeah, there's a range of reasons, and I'd have to go through them individually and tell you.
No, that's all right. So are you telling me sort of across the board it's more external factors that are holding it up, and not so much that we don't have the resources or I suppose manpower to? That's sort of my point. Like, is it hold-ups from our end, or is it external hold-ups?
Through the chair, it's sometimes a mix of timeline for design. For instance, Dargaville wastewater treatment bund upgrade, so that the tender's just been completed there. So they're actually establishing on site next week. So there's a number of Dargaville and local projects in Dargaville that are about to start or have just been closed out. Victoria Street flood bank repairs have just.
I did see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the Awakeno railway embankment's just in the process of being completed. And yes, there's a number of projects. Beach Road Culvert is as mentioned, the risk report. We're just reallocating some funding to enable that to start. A tenderer has been identified, successful tender identified, but we can't appoint them until we have the additional funding. So it's not that we're trying to delay or in any way affect the Dargaville specific.
So what you're saying is they're all about to pop off one after the other once everything's sort of gets
Through the
done.
chair, there are a number that are about to
Yes.
start, so.
Cool, okay. No, that's all good. I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Chair. If I could just add that, you know, it's very much the same answer as the question in the road end space, right? We're ambivalent about where the project is. Actually, we don't look at that, and we don't prioritise based on location or geography. We prioritise based on the work that we need to do and the individual project needs.
Yeah.
Councillor Vincent Lambeth and then Nair, and then we'll move on. So thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just to round that off, that last point, I was looking for reassurance that the allocation was based on need rather than location. And you're confirming that. Good, thank you.
No,
that was just starter.
Oh, or you just
It was the prologue.
Eh?
carry on then.
Get the currents warmed up, yes. Okay, firstly, regarding Tunapai Wharf and the piles that are in heaps, is there any money available in depreciation funding to assist with this? It might be more a Sue question.
Well, Sue, thanks about that. What I would say here is it's early days yet, okay? So we have 300K set for this project and we have 100K set for the emergency breakwater, okay? There are possibilities with those two projects. We're looking at that at the moment. It's early days right now, but the Tunapai Wharf is not in a good state.
Yep, okay, thanks.
So did you want to add?
Yeah, through the chair, so you'll recall that council made a decision to only 50% fund depreciation reserves for parks, and that's where the wharves go to. So all our three waters is 100% depreciation funded, so therefore we do have some reserves for them, but not for parks. We're running out.
So, and it would follow from that, I guess, that in those areas which have older reserve facilities are going to be more disadvantaged than those areas which have newer recreational facilities.
So through the, we'll fund them in a different way.
Yep.
We have to look at them.
Yep, all sort of, okay, now.
Or look at the next long-term plan, increasing depreciation.
Yeah.
Right.
And through the chair, staff are actively looking for external funding opportunities. There's been a new external fund announced recently. Can you recall the name of it, Brian?
Infrastructure fund, for instance.
Yes, so we'll continue to look for those opportunities where we can.
I just want to ask a couple of questions regarding the risk situation generally, because one of the statements you have here is that the current internal project delivery full-time equivalent is not sufficient to deliver 90 projects. So, I mean, how many staff do you need to run because like it's an ongoing hassle, the fact that we have these overruns. Some are multi-year projects, but some projects just don't get to the getting, and then and the concerns from Councillor Nair about if things ending up costing more is because of the delay. I think that's the point he was trying to get at. So how much do we need in the way of a staff resource?
Through the chair, so what we're identifying is that the use of external project managers is really important to get the program complete.
Yes.
And there's actually some real advantages of doing that as well, because they're just focused on delivering that specific project. That's what we employ them to do. So what we're highlighting, I guess, through that report is if we only allocated the 90 projects to our 2 internal project managers, we'll never get the program delivered for you.
Yep.
So we're trying to be transparent
yes.
In that. And be really clear that the use of external project managers is something that we're going to need to continue to do and to manage and budget for that in the next long-term plan.
Okay, I guess it's a matter of balance, isn't it, between having the right number of permanent staff and the right number so that some can come and go for specific projects. Is that
correct?
Yeah, okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm just concerned about historically having things taking so long for vacancies to be filled. One issue is, and I'm not too sure who's best placed to answer this, we seem to be having an issue about working from home. Do you think that's a factor in people seeking or being interested in a job working for the council?
I think I'll take that. Thank you, Councillor Vincent, for the question. I think I've said to council many times how important flexible working is to the council staff. Now, there are a number of reasons for this. Obviously, we've been able to get skill sets that we wouldn't normally be able to have got with our flexible working policy. So people that work outside the district come in for a certain couple of days, or work in other areas and other locations. It is a good tool to seek expertise that we can't normally attract in the Kaipara District Council and then in the Kaipara itself. So we have quite a good flexible working policy, which allows, and we have quite a lot of good structure to that policy as well. So, with staff that apply for it, we do look at their outputs, their outcomes, and what they're supposed to deliver. We do monitor that. We even have a form that they need to complete and prove that their workstation is safe from a health and safety perspective too. So we do have a significant amount of, structure behind the flexible working policy. And our managers are required to obviously make sure that our team, when they are, say, for example, working from home, do the job that they need to do, right? And so it's important to understand that. As far as a work environment goes and what candidates are looking for, I've said it again, I've said it 1,000 times, you've heard me before, I'm going to get a crack record on this. 80% of people looking for work in the current work environment in this country value flexible working and the ability to work flexibly, all right? Sure, there needs to be some structure around that, we've got that, but that's what people are looking for in this day and age. It just does go to our strategy as well when we have less workstations than we have staff, and we have staff located an hour 20 apart as well. So, for example, if everybody was to come in to the office, we wouldn't have enough seats for them. I think we're 40 to 50 shy of that. So the other thing I'd like to point out in this space is, we do an engagement survey of our people every year. We kind of do it every 6 months, actually. We do a pulse check in October, and then we do a full one in March. Consistently, the feedback from our people is that they really value the flexible working environment and the ability to be flexible how they work and where they work. And that just mirrors what the country and the workforce out there is telling us as well. So to sum it up, I believe KDC has a good strategy in this flexible working space to attract people to our organisation, and we get a good skill set because of our flexible working policy, and it does work for us.
Okay, well, that's
a long-winded answer. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. That's really interesting information. I'm just wondering though, in relation to how long these vacancies have been open, but relatively high unemployment. What is the difficulty here with us if we've got such enlightened policies? What is the difficulty in getting?
So through the chair, I can give some context to that for those the project managers. We didn't have the budget to support attracting them. So that's been readdressed recently.
We weren't prepared to pay enough.
We didn't have the budget to pay market rate.
Not another full-time equivalent, or no, just to have it at a competitive rate.
Correct.
Okay.
And what I would say, to reiterate Jason's point, is if we didn't have flexible work, it would make it even harder for us to attract people, because it is at the top of candidates' list. Will you allow me to work flexibly? And when you look at it in terms of, do we have an internal project manager delivering a project or an external project manager? Actually, how we monitor that is through the project management office. How are you progressing? What are your outcomes this month? So regardless of whether they were in the office, working from home, or working from an external provider, we're tracking that progress in terms of what outcomes are they delivering each month through status reporting.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing, and that's that project delivery is not a desk-based role. So, there are times where you can work flexibly from home, and there are times that you cannot. So, there's a lot of community engagement, contractor engagement, and site responsibility. And so our project managers, they need to be on site and engaging and working with the teams and the people in and around them. So, flexible working doesn't mean that you're always at home 2 or 3 days a week. It genuinely means flexible working. So they've got the opportunity to do some admin at home, but also they need to be out on site and managing the site and doing their mahi.
Councillor Lambeth.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Mayor, for being great. If we could just go back to your clarification question, really go back to your second slide, which is the map with the graphics on it. That's the one. Okay, so that's yeah, if you could just clarify, that's approximately $41 million worth of projects here, is that correct?
Yes, I think.
And that includes funded by the ratepayer and also funded by central government.
It includes external.
And it's a real mixture of that.
Yep.
And am I correct in saying, if I was to break that down, there's approximately 8.5 million for the central area, 12.5 million for the Mangawhai Kaiwaka area, 4.2 million as a district wide over the whole lot, but the majority of the share goes almost 16 million to the West Coast. Would that be correct, those figures?
Hard to say, Councillor Lambert, you've obviously done the maths, you've done your work.
Yeah. Okay. But does that sound about right, or? Okay, thank you.
Only one doing the counting.
Sorry?
You said, has it gone to 16 million to them? I mean, obviously they.
Hang on.
Yeah, let's chuck the $80 million in there too.
Mangawhai,
As
yeah.
a project, yeah, let's put all the.
Sorry, Councillor Lambert speaking at the moment. Can you let him have his say, please? Thank you.
So I'm just going off sheet 2 as what you've got projects for this year, not some imaginary amount for anywhere else or anything like that. But I'm just wanted to clarify that. I'm just trying to clarify these numbers here. That's all.
Well said.
Thank you.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just have a specific, again, question through the chair. Is that I actually have concerns, and I don't go into East and West. I have. My fellow councillor is looking after the East, so I have to look after the West.
Come on, Ash.
Pull it in.
One, obviously,
Ash,
I'm gonna ask.
Ash, can you just retract your statement you made about your other councillor?
Do we have to?
Sorry, what?
You just said that you said that the other councillor is looking after.
Not going East and West.
No, well, we're all looking after the whole district, so
Yes.
is this from making those
That's what we-
about your fellow councillors?
I would like to force it that we should look after together.
What is your question for the staff?
My question is very focused on Dargaville again, because I belong there. So there are 3 items there. I would like to know how long they have been sitting there. The Selwyn Park, 300,000. The Tinopai Wharf, I actually went there. I was called to look at that. The money is sitting, the budget is sitting, the actuals are not. So what are the key issues stopping those projects?
Been through this.
So Awakino Point is one, which was the flood money. And I don't see it here delivered. It's not delivered. The mouth cleaning was not done. The money was given $500,000 by Honorable ex-Prime Minister. And the second one is Selwyn Park, 300,000 from 200,000, spent $400. I actually see it every day. Nothing is done there. And obviously why we have closed the Awakino Point, it doesn't occur here.
Through the chair, Awakino Rivermouth cleaning has been completed.
It is not completed.
We have spent over $200,000 completing that project. The first stage was completed last year. The second stage, which is from the bridge out to the estuary, has been completed recently. So that work has been completed. The expenditure is not fully showing, but it's.
I'd like to get some report on that. I live next to it.
Yeah.
So I would like to get the full report. Because people are telling me it has been abandoned. It was abandoned twice because they couldn't do it. So I would not like that money go to elsewhere as you are distributing.
Through the chair, that has been completed. I can confirm that. So that is, so we're getting information, but that project has been delivered successfully.
Thank you.
So Tinapai Wharf, it's taken some time to get the consultants on board to do the review of the current report. Some of the reports we had were outdated, so I instigated a full marine investigation report on that. So that's only just come back about 10 days ago. So we're reviewing that tomorrow. So Not sure how long the project's been sitting there myself, but we're addressing it with the current report, and we're going to make some decisions on the way forward because it is in quite a dire state and needed to be closed down. And Selwyn Park, so we've got externals involved in there as well. We've got a draft design on board. It's been submitted internally for review. So that's underway, but we haven't physically done anything on site, but the draft design is underway.
Hopefully we'll see the physical thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, Council, I just want to cover something off here, okay? So my team are doing a really good job of answering your questions off the cuff, and I appreciate that, so thanks, guys. You've answered very well. I do need the questioning to be respectful, first and foremost. And also we do have had a process in place where if you do want questions answered, you provide them in advance. That would be quite helpful. I do ask that you read through all the material as well, because some of these questions, the answers are in there, because this is taking longer than it needs to, and we do want to make sure that it's relevant to you and we answer your questions. But if you provide them in advance, it could help us out, as we've agreed.
Okay, Brian and Kim and Hayley, thank you very much for the presentation. It's really excellent to see all these projects getting advanced, and I personally would say that the way that you're presenting the information to us is outstanding, very easy to understand. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those on your.
So everybody, we've got one more item in this session. Are you happy for us, seeing as Hayley is online and ready to go, that we continue with that and get through that one? Okay, we'll carry on. So next up, we have the Mangawhai Library location. Thank you, Hayley.
Thank you. So hopefully this is a very quick item. I'll take the report as read. Basically, the Mangawhai Library is a significant project that is scheduled in the long-term plan in year 3, 26-27. We have $6 million budgeted for that. Alongside that, we also have a project to create the Earlitch Park Master Plan. The Earlitch Park Master Plan is about to kick off. We're initiating that project now. But before we kick it off and we start investing and creating designs and potential layouts, we really need clear direction from this council about where you'd like to see the library. So should the Earlitch Park Conceptual Designs and Master Plan highlight a location for the library at Earlitch Park, or should it not include a library, and should staff be seeking an alternative location either at the MCP where we have land or other? The only thing I would note is that we did go out to the community and we asked them through the long-term plan consultation, I think it was a couple of consultations ago, about where their preferred location for a library would be, and the majority of the Mangawhai community came back preferring that the library was based in the village as opposed to the heads and away from sort of the retail district. So I guess that's key to note. But yeah, happy to hear your feedback and your preference on whether or not the library should be included in the Earlitch Park Master Plan.
Okay, thank you. I just want to speak to this first, and I do have some hands up here. But my understanding was that our direction about Earlitch Park was to assess what it was going to take to turn the land into proper sports fields. And that was where I thought we were going with Earlitch Park. So I can't really clearly understand where this library concept in Earlitch Park is coming from very much.
So sorry, through the chair, just to answer that question. So the Earlitch Park as a location came about because the community indicated they would like the library to be located in the village, and Earlitch Park is the only land that council currently owns in that vicinity.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I certainly agree with you as far as Earlitch Park was originally designated to be developed as a full recreational facility. I know that I presented to members of the staff a concept that was created down in Omokoroa in the Bay of Plenty, which nicely integrated a library with their recreational facilities. I think that the overriding overarching comment here now is that it is the only land down there that we own, and it would be insane to consider such a proposal on somebody else's land that we had to buy. So I'm on that basis in favour of Village Park, or at least being considered.
Councillor Wilson Collins.
Thank you. I had my question answered, which is good, but I just, I guess if we're providing feedback for direction, I'm not opposed to it. I agree with it. Council has since acquired the land, so that makes sense. When we did the consultation, it was talking about having to purchase land for a library, if it was going to be in the village. That kind of makes sense. But I think that the priority still needs to be sports fields for Ullage Park. It was the whole point of getting that land. And so if there's any investigation work done, and I'm not an engineer or a builder or anything, I'm not going to say that I have any sort of expertise here, but I would prefer to see the sports park part of the park closest to the road, and any buildings that were built were set back. So yeah, so the opposite of what's happened in Mangawhai Park and Selwyn Park, and yeah, so you actually have your park as your street frontage. So when people are using that park and playing their sports, that is actually seen and because I think that's part of the community good, and that any buildings are sort of, yeah, you know, not the street, but like, so you don't block off the park from the street, you know, so when people come, there's park, I can go and play in that park. Yeah, kind of idea. That was all.
Councillor Vincent.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not wanting to go outside the bounds of public excluded, but we're having a workshop this afternoon to discuss a development agreement with Mangawhai Central. Now, maybe out of that would arise the possibility of a site that's central.
Doesn't satisfy the need.
I think it has been raised before and maybe dismissed before too, but I just thought it's something that perhaps now that things are looking more real at Mangawhai Central, whether that would be something that would fit.
So I guess through the chair, that would require significant consideration because it would require a lot of investment, or you know, I guess a bit of a deal would need to be made that would impact development contributions. So yeah, I guess at this point, I really would prefer direction about whether or not the library should feature in the Ullage Park concept plan, rather than really starting to dwell on where the location would be as an alternative.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I tend to agree with the points made that Ullage Park is needs recreation facilities, sporting facilities and fields. That was kind of the first and foremost need for that land. I think where it's come unstuck a bit was the budget that was presented regarding the building. And I think we're still probably at a stage where, like Mike said, we need to look at perhaps an alternative if we needed to have anything there. I think it needs to be on a bit of a different scale. So I think sports fields for me are the priority for that area, and we really need to see what the concept is and what area we need to be able to have full-size sports fields for the community. So I kind of think we might need to even take a step back and actually have a look at the Ullage Park plans, concept plans. That's just my take on it.
Is there space to do both?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is.
yeah. I think that's kind of first and foremost.
Anyone else got feedback? Councillor Lambeth.
Thanks, Chair. I live in Mangawhai. I don't know how it operates. It is growing very, very quickly, and we've got a changing environment all the time. But a few things to consider. Flat land. we need flat land for sports field. There's not a lot of it around. So, we give that flat land away for something else. Or do something else on it, we're going to struggle to get the flat land back to create that sports field again. So that's just a logical thing to look at. My role on the commissioners panel for the Hills development, we know there's a large church that is almost complete or has been completed. We know that there's an possible education hub going up there. That board is on the line of Earlwich Park. So I think it's sort of answering its own questions on where it should go, because an education facility or a complex or a precinct will have a lot of use for the library. Large gatherings will have. I don't know whether a commercial area will have a good use for a library stuck in there, but then there's the coffee, the business and everything else. So it's a balance of one and a half and the other. So, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Chair. Like my fellow councillor, I don't know much about the library, but I do know that it's a library operating, I don't know, under dire circumstances or regular circumstances. The matter is here in LTP 2627. We are getting a new council in a couple of months. And I don't understand why we are giving so much priority to library location today when it is not something has to be decided today. And why not the other capital projects which we are behind?
So
Can you tell me the strategic importance of deciding today the Mangawhai library location, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, we obviously have a suite of projects that we need to deliver each financial year, and those projects are set by elected members through the long-term planning session. The Mangawhai Library is a significant investment. It's $6 million of council money, and it's planned in the next coming year. So we need to start planning around that now. So the project delivery team are focused on project delivery, but the asset management and infrastructure planning teams are focused on planning. So they're two separate parts of that process. We really need to get ahead of the game if we want to deliver the Mangawhai project on time and as planned in the long-term plan. So we need some clear direction now about where that should be. We did provide a master plan through the library briefing in February, where the library was located in Earlwich Park, and it showed the layouts of those sports fields. So I will find that and circulate that to elected members just as a bit of a reminder. Sorry, I don't have that today. But yeah, the reason that we're talking about this today, Councillor Nair, is that the asset management and the planning team need to begin planning and writing a business case and assigning a project team to this work. And so we need that direction from council on whether or not that library should be located in Earlwich Park through the Earlwich Park concept plans, or whether or not the Mangawhai Library project team now need to start looking for an alternative location.
Thank you. So my direction, if I may, I will defer it to the next year because it's not so urgent to be considered in this LTP as of today. So it's too far off. I would like to focus on other items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, so we have a work program. You have approved the work program. I often hear some commentary about how things take time and we need to get on and deliver the work program. The previous item, we talked about doing exactly that and delivering the program that you've approved. Now, you know, we're doing this, and this is why this item is in front of you, to get your direction so we can deliver the work program. It is rather frustrating at times, if I'm honest, where elected members then go, hey, no, you need to not deliver your work program now. So I just want to point that out. My staff are really working hard, as you just seen, to deliver the work program, which is why this is in front of you. I don't advocate to delay or defer items because we have to deliver what you have set us to deliver. So please help us do that.
So that's all I'm trying to say. Focus on the items which are more important to be delivered and don't come out with these items, please, which can be for 2 years hence. Thank you.
So through the chair, I've just shared on my screen the layout that we shared in February. And so you can see that we proposed the library and the car park to be in the lower bottom corner of Ehrlich and Moir. And then there were a couple of courts to the side of that, a very large running track and multiple fields in the centre, and further courts and fields to the far left. So we have provided a concept plan with the library in Ehrlich Park before, and so before we proceed with the plans for identifying which courts or which fields will go in the wider park, we need to know if we should be maxing out to the full Ehrlich Road corner of fields, or whether or not you want to leave that as an option for the library. Sorry, Councillor Paniora, I see your hand up there.
You go ahead, Councillor Paniora.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say that looks like a really good concept design and actually a really awesome space when it comes together. I'm happy for that to be progressed.
Councillor Howard, do you have something else to add?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say, a huge amount of frustration with some of the comments here. I would ask, actually, in this, I would say this, is that I would never have thought of a library being facilitated within Ehrlich Park if I hadn't gone and checked out the O'Makaroa situation, in which I did a full report to the staff. I note that it hasn't really been brought forward in any way, but there is a pretty straightforward functional process of including a library in with that building that you see in the high end of the park in the layout there. And I would ask Hayley if we could perhaps share photos that you have of that facility down there, because only by seeing these things do you see other people have been through the same process, and this was on a brand new recreational park, right? And it was just down the end, Councillor Aaron's point, down the end, out of the way, and there was the Western Bay's Sports Pavilion and Community Library. A smaller area, but you have to, it's all about a design, what you might be able to do. But it does lend itself, and this is not a matter of kicking the can down the road. This is a matter of getting on and doing it. We need the sports facility, it can all be done. So,
and we need the library.
And so I just reiterate, Mr. Chair, I'm definitely in support for looking at this.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Howard has done quite a considerable amount of legwork on that concept, including going and looking at it down country. So if we could please have that material distributed that Councillor Howard provided so everyone can understand that concept.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it was included in an appendix in the February briefing, so I'll make sure that I share that around again.
That's fine if we could just have it redistributed so it's at people's fingertips. I just want to give some feedback on the concept. If you could leave that up on the screen, please.
Oh, yep, just one moment.
My understanding was, in terms of the sports fields, that we'd allocated budget to do some feasibility analysis on developing the flat land into sports fields.
Yep, that's correct. And that's the project that we're about to initiate now. But we need to know whether or not those concept plans should include a library in them.
But the work about converting into sports fields isn't contingent on having a library in them. They can look at the entire flat area of the site, which was what the direction we gave to see whether it was feasible to do that or not. And then they might find that some of it isn't suitable, which may then lead to using it for other purposes.
Okay.
I don't know why that work hasn't progressed. It's been a considerable time since we gave the direction to do it. What's the reasoning behind that? Why hasn't it progressed?
So it was in the annual plan for the concept plan. It was added at the beginning of the year, and we have been basically filling the vacancies in our asset management team. So we now have a Parks and Open Spaces asset manager, and so we've got someone employed that can now begin this work.
Okay, because there was a person identified who was an expert living locally who was going to be doing it when we discussed it in the first place. So why didn't that occur?
Well, we need to follow the procurement process to engage people to work on our projects.
And why didn't you follow the procurement process and do it then, rather than waiting until, what is it, a year later?
So to be clear, we had a fully vacant asset management team. We only had an asset manager and no staff. We've only just completed filling those vacancies. So we didn't have anyone to initiate that project and to write the procurement plan and to write the scope.
So can you just clarify what we're looking at on the screen? From what I understand, that bottom road is Moir Street, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
And so the area where the built form is actually down on the flat, and the area where it's the hill is actually up where you've got a zigzagging track leading to a long skinny black thing. What's that?
Yeah, I think that's just like a playground and an area so that you can walk down and ride bikes, from my memory of the concept plan. But this was a concept plan that came from the Mangawhai Community Hub, and so the focus was on the hub's location, and it was identified that to build the library up in that top corner, which is very steep, would require a significant amount of earthworks and would be a very expensive option, whereas building it down in this corner would still allow for the mainly flat area to be utilised for sports areas, and it still allowed for a car parking space, which wouldn't have been able to be achieved up in that top corner for a library hub.
Right.
This isn't a concept plan for the park, it was a concept plan for the library.
I just don't think that we can do this in isolation, because we want to know how many sports fields can be achieved on the flat land first.
Yep.
And we want to then go and talk to our clubs and see if that's adequate for them before we start building a whole lot of car parking and library on the flat land. So we actually need to, before we can make a decision on location for a library, understand that program of work that we asked to have done some considerable time ago. I don't accept that because there was no one there that you couldn't have procured it, that could have been contracted out or something, as we've done with other work. So I think we need to get that sorted. My feedback is that I still have concerns around the financial model for funding this. And last time it came to us, we were told that there was going to be a communities DC elected from across the entire district to be targeted solely at the Mangawhai Library. Is that wrong, or is that still the intention, or what?
So can you repeat that question?
That's the intention, is the DC contribution, and we did have some money in there for the Darwin Library, but that was taken out. But I'm assuming that Darwin Library, there could be some money put back in there.
Well, okay. I find that a little bit politically unpalatable to suggest that when we get some development happening at Dargaville, like up in Moonlight Heights, that we're actually going to be allocating those development contributions to a library in Mangawhai. And I think it sounds very, very unfair as well. If Dargaville needs a library upgrade and we're going to collect community DCs, I think those DCs should be spent in Dargaville. I don't think we should be actually going and allocating all that money to Mangawhai. I don't know what the feeling is around the table.
So through the chair, you can have that discussion in your development contribution hearings. I think that's probably the most appropriate, because that's being led by Michael Dale.
Sure. Okay, I realise that. However, this whole project is contingent on development contributions and a whole lot of debt funding, and probably affects the model. That's all. So Thank you. We'll go to councillor Howard and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just referring all members back to the February briefing that we had. And on page 39 of that document, there is concept scenario 1, concept scenario 2, both of which have a building at the top end. Oh, we don't have that map there anymore. And it says limited ability to establish a community precinct. Now, what is a community precinct at this stage? For simplicity, what I'm talking about is one building that becomes a sports pavilion, you know, so kids can change and you have showers and all that. At the top end, looking down over all of this sporting park. So I think that until everybody sees that, and I don't see any reference at all to that in this briefing that we had. So I think, you know, let's get all the information out to members and see what we do. I totally agree with what's been said that, you know, if you do anything, work with the sports grounds and then see what we need for a facility. And I mean, it's hardly a community precinct if it's changing rooms plus a library.
Thank you, councillor Howard. And I actually agree with what you're saying, and that's where I'm coming from as well. I've been told that it's more expensive to do excavation and foundations up on the hill, but the flatland, as councillor Lambeth has pointed out, is very scarce and valuable as well. And in fact, we might want to spend a bit more on excavation and foundations and have the buildings up on the hill than not. So did you want to speak, Jason?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just wanted to point out, we have been not sitting on doing nothing. We have the asset managers that has been engaging with stakeholders in the domain and on the sports field issue. Clearly, there's a range of views around the table, and this is why this is getting difficult and has been difficult. And I want to acknowledge that too. Is the direction pretty much so we can find a way forward here and now to, you know, get some work done on the flatland, get the map of the fields, bring that back to you, and then that's stage 1, and then stage 2, take your feedback after that. Is that pretty much the direction we're having? Haley, is that okay? Is that where we're at? Yep, okay.
I'm against it, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, and like there's a range of views, so we're just trying to navigate our way through this, okay?
Okay, thanks very much. We'll have lunch now, if that's okay. Thank you, Haley, and we'll come back at 12:20. Thanks.